Hello, everybody. And I just need to, take a moment and say, oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for saying yes to this weekend. Kind of a lifetime dream of putting people together. I know you're going to have a great time. I'm going to say to you the same thing I said to me since I've been up at 6:30. Relax and enjoy it. Relax and enjoy it. Or take a Valium, one of the two. Help you get better. So how this works for me, I'm going to tell you a little story. I tell it to all my classes when they come in. It's called the Red Carnation story. In the floral world, Wayne and I are really very blessed to work with nature. And I'll tell you guys, every single week something comes in and it's gorgeous and it smells and you get to see way inside and you're just so, it's like National Geographic all the darn time. You think the public thinks that you forget that you're the only two people that maybe love the flowers. So once in a while you get a customer that comes in and they'll be like, I got a really great friend and she's artistic and I want something special. And I mean, it's like Pavlov's dog. It's just, you're like, well, we can do and we can do and we can add this and we can, and you're just all excited about it. And she's gonna want some of these billy balls. And then, I mean, this is, and you're like, and you look at her just like, I was thinking red carnations. Well, there is nothing wrong with red carnations, and goodness knows they're beautiful and they last a long time, but 37 years in the industry of making red carnations, your creativity has been put into the ground. So we find that without being with people that are also creative, we can't be creative because you can't be creative enough with a red carnation as if you were doing this. And you can't hate the public because that is your public, process. So this is workshop. The workshop is kind of the red carnation story because I know all your different fields. I know everybody has a red carnation story about something they were excited about and something did this. And I also know, and this saves me, is that when I pitched this idea to you, and most of it I did in person, the frenzy and manic look in your eye was like, it was the Pavlov. It was the dog drooling experience, and I thought, I could just see it. And they tuned me out, and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to fix it. And that made me think, this is going to work. This is good, because you guys also want some creative conversation too. So we're going to start out with what we call meshing our lives together, kind of a fun way to introduce each other to our process. And by the time this weekend is through, I know you're going to know Arthur better, you're going to know everybody in this room better, and you're going to know yourself better too, because it's going to be some of the interesting techniques when you're finally done. So what I'd like you to do for the meshing our lives activity is in my secret bag that you can see through. You're going to take whatever flavor M&M you want, and you can eat those. This, you take one of these that are secret, and you don't open these until it's your turn to talk. So, M&Ms, because some of you have to have chocolate right away to make it. We got that covered. Some of it has peanuts with it. We got that covered.
I try to avoid the candy. It's tempting, but if I do that now. Oh, God.
So while you're
Sugar?
getting your treat, behind me is Gretchen Boyer, and Gretchen is the Director of Education and Programming at the Salina Arts Center. Everything that we put on in this particular calendar schedule is about creativity. Everybody who's going to come in with a special event or special happening has got some creative story to share with you. I asked Gretchen, among many talents, she's a paper maker. So we are going to make paper together now, and then at the end of this event, we'll all take a piece of that paper home that has our name, our secret word, and some floral stuff. And Gretchen's going to talk to us about the paper making process, as we want to do it. So we'll let you chat a little while they're still getting there in the end, and then we'll start.
You guys can scoot closer too. Probably not. Okay, well, let's see. So I guess we're going to focus on centerpieces for now. Things to consider is size as far as transporting, so we probably can't go any higher than this. And we're using floral foam, so anyone that's not familiar with floral foam, you can't put too many holes in it or you'll lose your structure and it'll fall apart. So there's a lot of different ways to make it work. I'm going to take this apart to kind of show you. Everyone has this wire structure to incorporate. It can be anywhere within your design, but it is an easy way to use as an armature, but it can be used anywhere. So a lot of these techniques will be the same techniques that we use for headdresses, but this one's easier because it's not going to talk to you or have issues with like weight or anything. So this is kind of practice land. Let's see, I'll just deconstruct this. So basically I made this kind of as a general idea. A lot of my work is very chaotic, so it's a lot of static lines versus dynamic lines, and man versus nature. So I tend to do a lot of kind of chaos and kind of trauma within my arrangements, but try to make it pretty at the same time. Any questions so far? So basically, I'm just going to take this apart. Everything I do has some sort of structural base, and that is kind of the key to everything. So certain things like Crispidia don't really need a water source, so we use those a lot with headpieces, but you can use them anyway in your design. They don't need to really be attached. And then it's always kind of where will things fit and balance. So you could literally do things like this with the Crispidia. So you need to know, like if anyone has a question about like what needs water, what doesn't need water, grab a florist around and ask. So that's the key with this, is that it just becomes more structure. But you can use it anywhere. So this, I just kind of did some moss just to hide some of my binding points. I would say any binding points that you do the same kind of ties, so it's just repetitive. So anything you do, just repeat it through your design.
Is that one that needs water, the one you just pulled out?
The grasses, like you'll lose these. So these were all, so they're all in a floral foam.
They're in those.
But we'll use this in headdresses too, but you could use it anywhere in your design and let it dry also. Because I'm a big fan of things in various stages, as long as it's going to be pretty. Like grasses won't totally wilt. So as long as you are intentional with your materials. I'm all about tying things together. So this can, oh yeah, so this is bind wire, and it's just paper covered wire. And it's the best invention in the world. Other than like the glue dots, these are the other best invention. So this is key to like structure. We have these, just like styrofoam over here. So I would definitely do more structure-oriented stuff, less flowers. What we have to work with is on this side of the room as far as centerpieces, and then that kind of pile over there is for headpieces. So if there's any questions, just grab me on that. But there's all sorts of things you can make. These can go for headpieces or this. And let's see. And these were broken, so I just put them back together. So I would encourage you to use some sort of branch material and then some sort of like line material. And then Aspidistra is amazing. It doesn't really need water. You can do all sorts of structural things like that. Like, someone needs to talk besides me. You can all come closer too. So this is just a technique I use a lot, just in everyday stuff too.
He likes to rip it.
So you can basically, that's the official term, to rip. But this will actually, like, we'll use this in headpieces. It's an easy way to cover mechanics. Doesn't need water, won't brown, will wilt eventually, but you won't even really notice. And as long as it's in a water source, it'll stay like nice and firm like this. So that's that technique, which I can show you guys closer.
Is this something that we're going to be auctioning at the event, or, or taking home?
we didn't allow that to happen, so you can take the phone.
Okay,
Because you are going to eventually put your personal item on this.
that's what I was
And
like.
so she wanted that, and we just said, that you're, so when we leave that night, that comes back with us.
But the headpieces are,
You can keep that, but what?
You have to give the model back, though.
so this is something we will get to keep.
Yeah.
So if we put something real personal in it, we know somebody's not going to buy it for.
Oh, yeah. So basically, there's a million different ways you can do your structures. Usually, the simplest way is going to be the best. So you want it physically stable. But I'm all about like anything that works. So I'm just going to show you a bunch of various things you can do. So this would just be more of a, also would be more stable as versus the higher up. So it depends on comfort level, how much you want to challenge yourself.
So is this a case where you have to use everything or you use what you choose?
You can use what you choose. I just definitely want everyone to use one of these so that there's kind of a continuity between everything. It also just makes it a lot easier because you have an extra element of stability too. Because floral foam is handy, but at a certain point, you can't put too much into it or you'll ruin your structure. So these are Asclepias. Asclepias?
What do they call them? What's their colloquial name?
You know, I've never heard them called like, because it's like, you guys were calling them billy balls, right?
They sell them here as
Monkey
monkey balls.
balls. Oh. Well, that's not the official name. We do get people like, what's funny like with the shop is like a lot of times people will project just really, really weird random things. So it's like we had someone that was just like horrified by Anthurium, which I guess the not so good name is Peter on a platter. And it's like people will like associate things with like sexual things and then be just like these totally disturb people, the Anthurium. You'll just find all the disturbing things. You'll just find people really get disturbed by really odd things sometimes. And a lot of times it'll be like reference to like funerals or lilies. And it just ruins people forever. Like can't deal with certain things.
The mom and me, I'm going to tell you guys something. This is the euphorbia plant. It seeps white, and it's very toxic if it gets in your orifices. Okay, I got in the ER last year because I got it in my eye. So this be mindful. It's wonderful, but like just wash your hands, or if you squeeze the ball, like just be mindful. Okay. So you're the one. That's our box of balls.
When you start to use poison ivy, let me know. We are.
Oh my God.
I'm not there.
So this is going to be really abstract here.
4 years ago, I put Japanese maple and I had a lady call and thoroughly disgusted with me for putting marijuana in her arrangement.
She thought it was marijuana.
And I said, ma'am, I don't believe you know what marijuana looks like.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there some of that here today?
I grew up in the ditchweed capital of Kansas, so.
So I'm going to change a little while with Becky Arthur. We've got a table over here that has all sorts of extras, and underneath the table are some tripods that came from Jay Anderson's 60th birthday party. And rid of them anyway and toss them. I said, oh no, we'll keep them. They take them apart, they are bound, do whatever. There's a little bucket of sticks, like I said over here. There's yarn, and I know that you all brought personal things. So when you get around to attaching your personal thing, the earth will circulate. Because some of them are heavier than others, that's when you really need the expertise to make sure that you can harm what you've done or make your item lopsided. We don't transport these. We don't want them going full of water, and we may have to tip them a little even in the van. We will warn them once we get back over there, so they'll be fine. But don't worry about your not having water in your structure there.
So basically everything I add adds more structure and stability. So I would keep that in mind as you're building. The more things you add, the more stability it's going to be.
This is going to be better as far as heavier.
I think you would do really well to make something fantastic once you're on a deserted island by yourself and you need some shelter, as long as there's some food.
Oh yeah.
Clearly, your shelter would be the best on the island.
So this is kind of like, envision like a tornado has thrown all this into the air, and we're just capturing that moment of just movement and kind of chaos. I've kind of been in a traumatic natural event sort of phase right now. And then once you have enough stability, you can kind of just wedge things in, and then they can just kind of float. So this is more on the outside of the box situation. And then everywhere that things cross, I would tie, just so that it can be transportable. A lot of my inspirations come from Sogetsu Ikebana, and that's just part of that philosophy is you can create an arrangement out of anything, anywhere, at any time. So it doesn't even have to be floral materials. So that's why we're going to use a lot of non-floral things to just have a more structure-oriented, but then the tension between man-made and natural is a lot wider, and that just makes things more interesting, or at least in my view. Another thing, we're going to do a lot of yarn wrapping creation of things. This structure is basically made out of this wire. And then this is Midolino, which is like a thin wood. And I have some of this thin wire we can all share too. So this is just kind of making it thicker and a good gluing surface. And I might possibly be a little OCD, so it also makes great cat toys. So this is something you can do just to create an interesting line with a different texture in this piece and also in the headdress, because you have a bendability that you can actually use as a mechanic. It could be a line or it can be a mechanic. But the key is to kind of do glue dots down it. This is actually a lot easier without cats present.
So when you make your displays, do you have assistants who maybe do something like this under your direction, or would you do every piece of it yourself?
Depends on what it is. I did a wedding actually recently with these, and I made all of them, and they were just ready to go for bridesmaids bouquets. And then I just had people finish them, add flowers. That was my stressful 2-wedding weekend that I try to never do, but it was one was really fun, One was my partner's manager, so I had to take both of them. But it's like I try to get, like I have one full-time person and then a part-time driver / miscellaneous everything person. So I try to get them doing like stuff like this that we can use. Because these are the things that I find a lot of floral people don't want to do because they're tedious and they're like, oh, it's too much time, it takes. But once you like get going on it, it's like something you can do at home or you can force your staff to do it. It only works part-time though. Then they're like, oh, this is boring, I want to do something else. I'm like, no, we need 1,000 of these little things tied together. And then I end up doing like a bunch more, like at home. But these are things that just add a lot of value, just visually too. I'll do a couple things. This is where the time lapse needs to speed up.
That's your mean knitter.
My mean. So I should have had one of these just done, and they'd be like, and then it's like this.
Wait, I missed something.
I'm like, right out of the oven, it's totally finished.
Do you have a specific piece or anything that's signature to your style that you try to incorporate in every piece?
I think it's more the concept of tension, and it's a tension between like static lines and dynamic lines, and then kind of the tension of opposites. So I do a lot of things where it's like tropical flowers, like heliconia, which are very, very angular and sharp, with like vines, or something very feminine and soft. It's one of those things, like it took me a long time to really define it for myself, but my customers could see it. Like they knew, like someone would be walking up with an arrangement, they would know that it came from our shop. And it's like, well, how can they tell what it is, but I have this hard time defining it. I did a European Master's certification program, and that's kind of where it kind of defined what exactly my signature was and how I incorporate that and everything. Because it's like, you basically project yourself into your art. So you just have to be aware of what you're projecting, because other people are going to see it regardless. A lot of times people will project their view of what they think it is, but I think it's pretty obvious for people, like when you see their work and you see their choices, what's going on with them. So it's like a lot of times, like we'll deliver to a hospital and you'll see like the arrangements that people leave, and some of them are really horrifying and like really bad color schemes. And it's like, you can tell that the people that made them were not happy in their work environment. Like they weren't inspired, they weren't full of joy, they were just like mass producing something, and it shows in their work just by their choices. And then you can also tell like if people are comfortable with their work, because a lot of times people will make things really, really close and really tight. And it's like, oh, you're trying to control it too much. You're like freaking out about it. A lot of times like new designers will do that. It's like they make everything way too short. And it's like, space is good, space is your friend. And that's another thing, like space for me is really important. Like the negative space is as important as the like physical taken space. So like jump around from like flower shop to metaphysics to psychology. Let's see. Well, that's kind of how my brain works. It's very, take inspiration from everywhere and apply as much that is needed.
So those little glue stickers, you had them on to help hold it, and then as you got to them, you took them off?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise you'll like end up sticking things to it where you don't need it. It just keeps everything so you can bend it. Because these will break pretty easily, but once you have them wrapped with this and then the yarn, then you can really like do all sorts of crazy stuff like this. So this will come in handy with headpieces, which we'll get to later. I'm like, oh, but also like in this design, you can just use it as a mechanic and just have a line incorporated. I'm being a super messy person over here. So let's see. And we have a bunch of different colors of yarn. It would also work with raffia, or even the bind wire would work. And I'm going to follow my shoelaces. But basically, a lot of my concepts are like physical tension, and where that placement goes is based on actual like where it will bend. Also with flowers, like you'll know at a certain point you can bend it to a certain point, and then it breaks. So everything is basically like how far can I take it before I lose my material. And this is kind of also possibly how I feel right now. Little ah. So that's some of the concepts. Is there any questions, like, as far as mechanics or concepts? I guess, okay, how about everyone tell me what you brought to incorporate and how you're thinking you'll incorporate it. Go.
I've got a little metal thing that is laying on the table that is kind of a sculptural, and it can be just in the foam at the bottom, and it can have things intertwined in it or around it.
Okay. And what does it mean to you?
It started off as like a symbol of a crooked life path, but I couldn't make it too big, so then I stopped it. Well, then my friend pointed out it looks like, kind of looks like a lady with a pregnant lady with a baby with the ball on it. I'm like, oh, I like that too. So I don't know. Birth, life.
Cool. I think the more like concept-driven pieces are, the better they are. So it's like definitely bring in as many different elements and abstract thoughts as possible, and then try to make your physical materials like reflect that.
Okay.
So.
I'm going to speak to if they use a heavy piece such as that.
Oh yeah.
How you're gonna-
So let's see. I don't want to cut any of these. We have some of this that's weeping. That's going to be for headpieces, but this will all be for like the bigger pieces. Definitely like cut at an angle. I tend to always use my clippers because I go from branch to flower. And then like this one. So you want to get in your foam pretty good. That's where these come in handy because it has another layer of structure. The foam is taped into like a plastic container on the inside of your like ceramic or concrete material container. If you cut it and put it in, you don't like it where it is, and you take it out, you have to recut. So every time it's out of water, you have to recut it. And then if you put it into foam and then pull it out, the foam will actually stick on the bottom of your stem and clog the stem. So just be cautious of that. A lot of this will be like actual physical like stability. So if this doesn't work here, it'll just fall out, or it'll like the foam will rip. So it's a little bit of a, once you start working with it, you'll see kind of how far your materials can go, but you want it to be really stable. And that's something you just, as you're working, you'll start to feel like how far things can go into the foam. You want to go in at least like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Try not to like brace it all the way to the bottom because you'll end up like crushing things at the base. Also within the foam, so this kind of structure that's happening here is going to be happening in your foam. So you'll sometimes hit stems within. So you'll just kind of have to feel that as it's happening. It's like all these things that I don't think of on a normal daily basis. I'm like, oh yeah.
So I want to remind you, Arthur mentioned it earlier, so say you put that in there, you don't like where it was, you took it out, it's a pretty big stem, and you've made a hole, and after a while, you're going to have all these holes which aren't going to hold another thing because you have this Swiss cheese. So if you're not for sure you like it there, just kind of gently put it there and then take a look. Don't do this until you're really sure, because you don't want to have a Swiss cheese kind of a thing. It's not going to hold your flowers.
Think of it as intention. You have to be really clear with your intention of where you put things. So you can like kind of move it around and like look at it kind of stunt double ways, like, well, I think I want to put that there. But be really clear with your intention when you actually place it into the foam. That's what like all of this structure gives you a lot more ability to do a lot of different things with it without having so much issue with the foam itself. A lot of times I just use structure and no foam. Like in a glass vase, I'll do like a wrapped like birch branch. So you have like a semicircle, and then the tension of that holds it into the vase and also holds all your flowers in. And then everything you add within that strengthens the structure so that you can actually tip the vase over without dumping everything out. So a lot of what I do is like visual tension, psychological tension, and then actual physical tension of the materials bracing against each other. So I think that's the key concept there.
When you're designing, you're usually working like in the round with centerpieces as far as the balance, and or do you sometimes don't care what the back side looks like?
Usually I do a front and a back.
Okay.
You have to decide what you want to do in your piece. So I guess that's a really good point. You have to decide. I should stand right here a little. Don't hide behind your pieces. You have to decide if you want a front and a back. I'm all about asymmetrical balance.
Symmetrical or asymmetrical?
Asymmetrical. So, I mean, you don't have to be asymmetrical, but I think that feels more natural. And for me, it's more of a natural flow. I also tend to, like, in floral design, there's usually a focal point, and I'm not so much into focal points as a literal focal point. Sometimes it's the concept is the focal point, or the customer is the focal point. With headpieces, it's all about the whole person. So instead of like, I'm making something to put on someone's head, you're making something on someone's head that is like part of them for that evening. So instead of like separate, it becomes like a vase where it's like, you're working within the confines of that person. So it feels a lot more natural. And also, like a lot of times in like floral fashion, people will make things that are so uncomfortable that your model comes out and they're just like, and it looks really unnatural and weird. So I try to make things that people can wear like for hours, that aren't too heavy, and just have a very natural flow to it. So you see the flowers moving within the piece. It's not so like, I can't move, so it doesn't feel so like contrived. It's more like tribal, which I have a book I'll pass around that's kind of like my biggest inspiration as far as headpieces.
Arthur will get around to all of you, and I'm sorry about being the taskmaster, but we got to get you to your station and start.
Hobby Lobby that's like some weird netting.
Yeah.
Like it looks like if this and plastic netting like fused together. Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? Then with some yarn store. Yeah, I've had this forever. I thought it was a good time to use it.
You beat up a drag queen and stole all their goodies.
of its core. We look at a sliced onion and the layers. So as we mature and become our truer selves, things fall back and are like being revealed. And so my hope here is to have, like, this is the true self, and I'm going to have these. That I'm going to have like organic material coming around and inorganic material. I'm going to have some yarn and maybe even some cardboard just covered with different textures just to release, but then you also have growth, and so I don't know. There'll be some tension in that, some asymmetry in that. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
No, just fun to see everyone's different take.
Yeah.
And especially I think when people have,
Yeah, totally.
which it's like I always want to go back to it, but it's like there's never time to go back to it, which I'm like, how do you fix that?
Yeah. I went from painting like, 8 by 12 canvases to, well.
Well, you can glue anything you want to this as long as it doesn't interfere with where the hair is going to be.
Okay.
We just don't want to be working with actual glue when it's that there's
What kind
like
of glue do you have that would hold that down?
it's Oasis glue, so
I'm not familiar with it.
it glues flowers to flowers.
Is it pretty
So-
sticky? At one time I had almost thought of maybe somehow doing a wave. Or
I mean-
doing it to where it's covered in this and then it's, or maybe with the white. What do you think? And then we offset it where there's like,
As finished pieces, like I would make this like wire it together like the way
after
you
I've
want
already
it.
covered them in this, or would you just,
Because they once you wrap them,
Yeah.
it's not going to maintain that unless you do the wire on the inside too.
Well, yeah, I was going to do the wire, but if
But
you
you
think
could do
it'll
it
be
like
safe
this.
like that,
Because here, let's go this way. Okay, so say you have floating string. I'm gonna have you hold it.
okay,
So tomorrow you have your pieces,
okay.
2 or 3.
Do you think offsetting them like the smaller loop, the next to smaller and the larger, or?
If you don't necessarily get too like fixated on the space of things,
Okay.
I'm more interested like what will the tension of this do? Like what shape is it going to be when I just fold it in half?
Okay.
But I mean, you can like literally like pin through,
Okay.
but you can pin anywhere
Okay.
and then add that as part of your structure tomorrow.
Now, what would you suggest?
But I would do it more as part of the structure and not try to have the hair people because we may not have, it'll be really hectic. So, and that may slow them down.
Are we able to request them be able to like do something on the face, or?
My whole intention with them is this is the most stable part and
Okay.
then everything else we can like cover with flowers basically.
Okay.
So it won't be so constructed.
So I need to have a lot
looking.
more flowers than what I'm thinking in here then.
Not necessarily,
Okay.
because this is just as important as the design, but part of this will be their hair.
Right.
Actually, do I have?
Are
the
these all
hair.
yours? Mm-hmm. Oh my Lord.
Let's see, this is random. This is kind of the style we're doing.
Okay. And that's just kind of just sitting on our head.
So how much do you think they need?
Because this is the stability point. Oops. But this part, I mean, you could almost, as long as this is stable to the base.
Okay.
But I would totally do like some sort of crazy like asymmetrical.
Everybody else is going to kind of go up. So I like the idea of going down then. We're good. Okay, yeah.
So that would be a totally different vibe also.
I could do that with just the copper even.
Do like, yeah, that could be fun. And then you have something different.
Yeah, just hold it kind of close to it. Yeah.
In my fresh flowers.
Great idea.
All right, let me wrap this. I'll work on that, getting those cut off.
And then definitely,
Some of that weight off of them. So,
because as long as we can connect it to here, I think we'll have a lot more flexibility with this idea.
right.
Because we can move it where it needs to go. Whereas if it's attached to this, it's kind of, that's the only
Then
option.
the skewer can go in here and be tied off.
Yeah.
And I'll wrap the skewers in moss, or I can just use sticks.
And comfortable. And not having it symmetrical gives us a lot more freedom as to where it goes. You could do probably some longer branches and go outwards.
Just a little bit.
I would save some really good ones, and then we can figure out how to make that work.
Okay, so
Because the weight of that outwards isn't going to be that much, whereas the weight of this,
on top.
if that's all stable, you can go out further with lighter materials.
Okay.
And then you get the drama because people are going to see this, and it's just kind of register as one thing.
Okay. 'Cause then I really want.
They were fun. She gave me like I like Ikebana, this is our dresses. It is. So the drawings worked out.
Oh, good.
But everyone makes fun of my drawings because they're like, I don't know, they're hilarious. I did a competition in Japan and we had to do a sketch for
Yeah.
it. And I just used like not even Sharpies, like highlighter pens. So on the official like here's my finished piece, and then there's like my sketch, and it's like
And it doesn't
blue and
match
pink and
all.
yellow. Actually, I think I have. It's really
So
pretty.
should I make them about that long, or what do you think?
I would make them longer than you think because we can always cut them down. Because you can do like multiple people.
And I guess it'll probably make it a little smoother on your decoration.
Need them?
This way, and then you could tie it to them because those will go into the foam.
Oh, that's
So-
right. Just hammer them in. Okay, so
But that'll be when we're making it.
or will it all be at the
We'll
other
bring
place?
all the flowers for this. I would just, any pieces, I don't know how we'll do it yet. This can go over without you.
Bucket or a box or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would make more extra pieces than you think you need, just in
Sure.
case.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had this. This is a part of a wetland. It's a pretty firm. Kind of a little bit of nature.
Yeah, it's just the more prepared, the better.
It's Australian rat.
Albino rat.
Yeah, it's very
Chewy.
chewy. Yes, they're almost like chicken. But wow, they're really big on the south end of town. North end of town, it's not so much. They got their act cleaned up. And the exterminator came and got that.
My favorite.
Yeah, I could tell when you were making that. I'm like, yeah, you're stringing things together. It's going to be like super strong, even though all your points come together because of how it's.
Yeah, it feels very natural.
Okay. I was kind of going on that. I don't know what I'm going for. I like shapes. I don't know what to tell you.
That's fair. Shapes are good.
Shapes. tree silhouettes. I just like shapes. I love this. So,
I would say with this, I would
Yeah.
probably do another one somewhere so that you have another repetition of like a cut edge.
oh, you mean another cut edge coming out from somewhere besides this?
Oh, I guess.
There are 3 of them. I did one of those ones underneath there, and I flipped the tripod, and so this would hold the tripod would hold it.
I would probably do another one because I didn't see the other two.
Okay.
And of course, I don't know what table height it'll be,
Okay.
but just so it's a definite repetition.
All right. I'll go get one of those and disassemble it. All right. Thank you.
And then just make sure it goes down and covers. And then let's say you add your beads, another level, you want to make a rose. So just we'll have to come back through here. And did you get some corsage pins?
I may just have to cut that out to make that do what I want it to.
Hi, Arthur.
Hello.
Here we are at the Spirit of Nature workshop, and we've been here all morning long. 17 people creating, wildly creating, getting ready for a show tomorrow. And you are from, where are you from?
I'm from Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. And I know you have a store of your own. The name of your store is?
That's called Babylon Floral.
Okay. So your premise in what we've been doing today, kind of weaving and creating, but you're working with organic materials. So explain that process to us.
Well, this specifically is more about the combination of man-made versus nature and kind of playing up the tension between the two, but using nature as the inspiration as far as line and material to translate back into the man-made part. To kind of combine the two, but still have a concept showing through the materials and through the final pieces.
It's been real interesting because what we brought on board today is creative individuals, but they are not florists. So I've been inspired about their willingness and what they wound up doing, and they brought in some personal material to really make it their items with it. So this morning we made a centerpiece, a tabletop centerpiece. Some of them were so heavy that it took me like all my strength to carry them to the front door. And then this afternoon we're making a headpiece. So let's talk about the headpiece to the group.
Okay. So I've been doing headpieces probably 20 years at least, and I've just found multiple ways to do them. They're all inspired by tribal cultures and a more abstract creation process. So none of the flowers will have a water source. Everything is based on piercing and tying, and the key point is an attachment between model and headpiece.
Yeah. So what is the hardest part in your teaching the class?
I think timing is actually the only thing. I wouldn't say hardest part, I would just say it's the most complicated part.
Okay.
Because once you have so many people doing so many steps, if one thing gets behind schedule, then it kind of dominoes. But at the same time, that creates a little bit of stress, which also pushes your creative boundaries and makes you really think about new ways to achieve kind of what you're doing mechanic-wise, which is kind of how I've learned my processes that I use. It's usually stress and having to make something work with what you have available without any sort of outside influence.
Yeah.
So you just have to make your materials work for you. So once you're really confident with those materials, it just kind of becomes autopilot.
Yeah. I wish that you could see the light in the eyes of the people that are working on some of the things. It's just, it's inspiring. It really is inspiring. I walk around and I'm like, look at them. They're so excited about with their hands creating and they see it. So looking forward to the end product, and we thank you so very much for being with us.